I'm Julie Barkey with this Senate update. The mothers of two daughters who were murdered in what became high-profile cases spoke in favor of a bill that they say will help convict the guilty and exonerate the innocent. DNA Saves is sponsored by Senator Carrie Rudd. She discussed her proposal in a news conference on Thursday.
In November of 2003, my little community of Pequot Lakes was forever changed by Drew's murder. In August of 2003, the Sepich family and their community was forever changed with Katie's murder. This week, we have been working in the legislature, and I have had the opportunity to work with these two amazing women, Linda Walker and Jan Sepich. And they are really committed to making sure that this tragedy doesn't happen to other families. Minnesota passed this law 10 years ago, but we weren't ready, and the science wasn't ready. And there was a challenge in district court. But today, this bill has passed in 28 states, and it's working. And we think it's time for Minnesota to come on board with the rest of the states, because it has met the constitutional challenge, and it's a good bill, and it's an important bill.
Thank you so much for coming. The reason I am supporting this bill is that I know that it will save lives and that many families wouldn't have to endure the pain of losing one of their loved ones. And not only that, it will also exonerate those that have been wrongly convicted.
This bill is about saving lives and exonerating the innocent. And in the 28 states that have already passed and implemented this, we've seen that work. We know it works. More sadly, we know what happens when states don't pass this. We see the lives that are lost. In Nevada, Breonna Dennison would have been saved if this law had been passed in Nevada. It has been passed now in Nevada, and in Nevada they call it Breonna's Law. But we know that her mother Bridget, her Aunt Lauren, and all those who loved her would so much rather have Breonna with them than a name on a law. My daughter Katie was a graduate student when she was very, very brutally raped and murdered and set on fire. The only evidence we had in her case was the DNA that was found under her fingernails in the blood and skin of the man that killed her. After she was murdered, I was told that that DNA profile had been uploaded into the National Forensic Database called CODIS. And I made the offhand comment that I was so glad we had that, because we had the identity of the man that killed her. We just needed to match it to a name. And I knew he was such a monster, he would be arrested for something else. And when they took his fingerprints and when they took his photograph, they would swab his cheek and we would discover who her killer was. And Detective Jones said, "Oh no, Jan, it's illegal in New Mexico and almost every other state to take DNA when someone's arrested." So for the next 2 years, I did a tremendous amount of research, and I talked to forensic scientists, and I talked to prosecutors, I talked to legislators to find out why we weren't doing this. And I was told a lot of things, and one of the things I was told was that it violates someone's privacy to take their DNA when they've merely been arrested but not convicted of a crime. But I learned from the forensic scientists that developed CODIS that that's just not true. There's over 3 billion markers in our human genome, in our DNA, and only 13 of those that were selected because they're non-coding and have no genetic information are put into CODIS. Now, one of those markers does tell gender, but that's the only thing that can be gleaned from that profile. And I am so certain that there's no private information in CODIS that my DNA profile is on the back of my business card. So if I were arrested and had my DNA swab taken and they put it into CODIS, that's the information that's in there. There's no private information in there. The name doesn't even go into CODIS. It's a specimen ID number. It's only matched back if there's a direct hit to crime scene evidence. So there's no privacy violation. And the United States Supreme Court has said that it does not violate the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. And although a Minnesota appeals court said in 2006 that it was a violation of the Fourth Amendment. The Supreme Court said it is not. And just yesterday, the Minnesota State Supreme Court said, in a case having to do with garbage collection, that the Minnesota State Constitution and the United States Constitution are identical on matters of privacy and search and seizure. And so there is no more expectation of privacy under the Minnesota State Constitution than in the United States Constitution. So we were very, very happy to hear that ruling, because now we know that in the state of Minnesota this will be constitutional. The Attorney General had already said that she believes, Lori Swanson had already said that she believes this bill is constitutional, but now the Minnesota State Supreme Court has agreed as well. The reason that we are here, and the reason that Linda and I and other mothers care so much, is that we know the excruciating pain of burying a daughter. And it matters to us that this law be passed here in Minnesota, as it has in 28 other states, so that those wonderful young women and men in the state of Minnesota can be protected by having DNA used just like a fingerprint taken at the time of booking for a serious felony crime. The system's already in place. Minnesota already takes DNA from those who are convicted of a felony. So all the systems are in place. So there would not need to be any new database, any new system set up. Our family went to Congress, and in 2013, the President signed into law the Katie Sepich Enhanced DNA Collection Act. And what that does is it authorizes grants for states to help implement their programs. And that is available through 2015. So if Minnesota were to pass the law this year, there would be federal grant money available to buy equipment, any new equipment that would be needed, hire any new personnel that would be needed, buy any more kits that would be needed. I do think it's very important to note that there's been many studies done. One was a very independent academic study by the University of Virginia that was released in 2013, and it concluded that for every profile, DNA profile that goes into the database, and nationwide the average cost is $30 inclusive, and that means for everything. Every DNA profile that goes into CODIS eventually saves taxpayers $27,000.
And this would be anyone who is arrested, or just
Violent felony.
okay? So rape, any sort of
sexual
attack.
yes,
Okay.
yes, that type of thing. We're not looking to do like a DUI or any of those types of crimes. Just the violent offenders, felony offenders.